Mike, could I ask you a quick one while I got you? What do you like for a BDC agent pay plan?
I like an hourly, and then I only pay on solds. So hourly plus whatever you want to pay per sold, because I don't think setting an appointment and getting the show, and I mean, I think that they're going to do that to get the sold anyway. So that's the way I look at it.
What's a good number for a sold?
I think it really depends on that's a negotiation, and I have done that over the years with different for different individuals based on their skill level. But I mean, for me, somewhere between 30 and 50 per sold.
We're doing 40, Gary. Look at, bro, we just keep nailing it here, Mike. We're like exactly the
Yeah,
same.
and that's the number. I think you start a new person out at like 30, but if they're skilled, you get them up in that 50 range.
And what are you doing per hour?
Well, we're like 15, 16 per hour, something like that, which isn't much, but is what it is.
So it's that you keep it simple. So right. So it's 15 an hour and boom,
Yeah,
like 30 for a sale.
right.
Thanks, guys.
And look, lately, Gary, I've been kind of anti uh, BDC. I've been listening to Kevin a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, and we're transitioning into really our salespeople being their own BDC. So I'm trying to transition to where we really only have one person for oversight, and then each individual salesperson is going to be responsible for their BDC activities. You have one for oversight and overflow. So if there's something going on and that salesperson's with customers, so to speak, or they're off that day and there's communications, you do have one person to catch that bucket of stuff that's getting missed. But that's the direction I'm going, because I just think it breeds laziness amongst your salespeople if you have a really um, strong BDC, for lack of a better, expression. If you have a really strong BDC and these salespeople are just showing up and here's your appointments, here's your shows, here's everything done for you, it just breeds so much laziness. And when you look at these salespeople in a 10-hour day and your expectations are for them to sell 22 cars a month, I mean, if you're selling one car per day in a 10-hour day, I mean, what's that taking? Maybe two. If it's a really long deal, it might be 3 hours. We have 7 hours of downtime. So if you can't set yourself, three appointments in 7 hours, through, all the different things that are at your fingertips, text, emails, videos, phone calls, follow-ups, all these tasks that you're automatically alerted to. I mean, so like all this stuff, if you can't generate that, I just think you're in the wrong industry. So that's the way I'm looking at it more recently.
We don't, Mike. We don't have any BDCs anymore. We have two sales departments. Um, People who are allowed to and qualified to handle follow up and leads through the internet, and they are exclusive to that. So we have excellent people who are not in that department, and we have people who can't handle the level of oversight. But we basically have assigned a sales manager. Oh, not basically. We have assigned a sales manager to managing that team exclusively, who is also capable of doing F&I. So those people are about a third of the team, and they're producing over half of the sales.
Yeah, and that's great. I love that. And we're looking to do something similar as far as who can handle those leads. So based on your conversion rate, based on your activities and your ability to get those solds as an end result,
Yeah,
you'll be the one that gets more of the leads. So like, if you fumble all the time, we're not going to keep giving you the ball.
it's not a crime to not be somebody who doesn't do great follow up and doesn't doesn't hang on to something that takes 10 days to mature and can only handle 2 days. So you just don't have them in there. But in our case, we cut out in four stores, let's say $1.5 million worth of BDC expense.
Yeah, that's incredible. And we've done similar, not quite on that scale, but that's what we're working towards. Like, I'd like to get it to where it's just one person and then one guy on the desk, similar to what you said, one manager. So you have two levels of oversight to make sure that those leads are getting handled the way they should be. And like I said, and like you said also, if they're not handling them, they don't get them.
We've
You
had
just
people who fail on the floor go to the BDC and sell 40, and we've had people who failed in the BDC and go to the floor and sell 40.
you,
Right, so it's truly two different people, and some people can handle the level of accountability that's required if you work in the direct sales department, what used to be a BDC, but you start and finish your own
I
deals.
think you just nailed it with having somebody on the desk overseeing. Because if I'm on a test drive and if I'm a salesperson and I get a response from an e-guest or an internet opportunity, to have a manager at the desk be able to respond on my behalf, that's huge. So nice. I think that's a great bridge from a BDC to more of an internet department sales
Yeah,
strategy.
and they sit in one room, so they're not even on the desk at all, right? So they sit in that room with the six people that are in that department for the entirety of that day, and they can interact with them and hold them accountable, etc. And as far as compensation, everybody's on the same pay plan. It's a sales pay plan, and then for the desk, if you have four managers, including that person who's assigned to that on a full-time basis, then you split the pay four ways. So if everybody's on whatever 2.5% of the variable gross, then that's what it is, whatever the pay plan is. So it solves for everything and it gets that level of teamwork in. And by the way, every desk manager can't be a trainer, and every desk manager can't be the best coach, and every desk or floor manager can't do everything. So you just try to put the right pieces of the puzzle in your jigsaw.
Adam, you mentioned something. I'm curious, real quick. I've noticed in the dealers I've been in lately, more of them are more updated, modernized, and a lot of the salespeople, unless they're working a customer, are in more of like a back room type scenario. Is that, and collectively in this room, is that now more of like an OEM preference when they're doing facility upgrades? Is like a
It's
workroom?
definitely an OEM preference, and it doesn't work for some
I
people,
just,
right? I
it's
mean,
just something I've
if you
noticed.
have yeah, it's definitely an OEM preference, but having built a couple of new facilities in the last few years, they push towards that, and the thought process behind it is, if the OEMs knew how to sell cars, we wouldn't be out there, and every time they try, they fail. However, they're looking for an Apple Store mentality. They're looking for in their mind, an experience like that. The problem is that we have, you can call them old dogs. We have people who are experienced, who have great relationships with their customers, who can work all day at the pace that they want to work and produce results that you want to have. Sticking them in a closet managed by somebody over their head will force them to take themselves and their portfolio elsewhere, because they're just not that type of person. So this gives us both avenues, and again, we've had people fail in both. We've had people succeed in both. But for the most part, we've had people who are really good on one side of this and really good on the other side, but not both. But we have to push back against the OEM. They have you build these facilities and you got this empty room. It's called a bullpen and never have windows, right? and and then you say, well, really, our model is we want our people out there making videos and doing social media and following up with their customers and talking to people in the service lane and talking to people in the service lounge. Exactly what do you want them to do in a bullpen?
No, it's crazy. And a lot of the stores here in Minneapolis, especially in the West Metro, the more affluent area, they're all upgraded. We were at an Audi store yesterday, and it's like, how do you even justify the expense? I mean, obviously the OEM kind of puts you in a position where you have to, but I mean, these facilities cannot be cheap now.
I don't think you can build something at under $400 a foot now, and that's including the garage, right? So somebody's got a 30,000 square foot. That's a mid-size dealership, and there's 300,000 square foot dealerships out there. That's 12 million, keeping it to somebody's code plus the land and permit, etc. So, and the electronics that they want in there and all that stuff. So anyway, no, nothing's cheap.
Yeah. Does the OEM participate, or do they work the contracts with with the purveyors of the materials to get you guys better deals? I guess this is where I have no experience. I'm just curious. Like, do the OEMs participate in any of it?
Yes, no, and sometimes. So
Gotcha.
each of them has a program, and so they all have requirements. Some underwrite it, and then you get to people like Nissan or Stellantis, and they say, "We'll give you 500 extra cars that you don't want," and that's their way of paying you back. And so there's some that do help. They will not build the building for you under most set of circumstances unless they're a building that they want to own. And there are programs out there for minority people at times, where they will support the development of a building and or a location, but um, you almost have to start with you're getting nothing but cars.
Crazy. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate the insight. You can definitely tell there's more of a minimalist vibe in the newer stores. No desktop, a lot of laptops. Desktop computers seem to be kind of a thing of the past out on the show floor. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and just build as many bays as you can afford to build, and then when you think you can't afford to, build more. But you got to sell cars, that new car part of the engine in your market. And I think that all of us have to realize that we are a 15 to high 14 million throughput business, not an 18 million throughput business. And so now you're fighting for market share amongst 15 million, and it affects everything. Everything it affects used cars, it affects parts, affects how many people you have working there, etc. And I think all of us should be trying to get more production out of the same amount of people, because if you have weak links and you're missing deals today, in service or in sales, that's where you're losing your share.
When you just said that, first of all, it was very insightful. Thanks for sharing that. That scares the hell out of me because I'm thinking about the diminished supply of 12.5 million, normally over 16 million as well. You were talking about new cars not selling against 16, you're selling against 12, 15, 14 instead of 18. And in the used market, you're not selling against 16, 18, or 19, you're selling against 12 and a half. And it's the bad, crappy 12 and a half. There's not, the 1 to 5s are few and far between if you can get them. So if the point is that when you say all that, and then I hear people are not following up on leads, wow, that's a recipe for disaster.
Adam,
Well,
you're
that's why we can't give those leads to people who won't, right? It doesn't mean they don't have a place in our organization if they produce the revenue that's required out of their position, but it just seems to be two different profiles, right? I mean, it used to be that you had a BDC because it wasn't that you were doing it for them. It just that we wouldn't manage them to the level. And sales managers who didn't have to do that level of follow up in their career don't know how to hold their team accountable to do work that they never did.
Adam. Do you feel that and this is a really good conversation. Do you feel that the OEMs are watching the SAR and like saying, okay, maybe now is not the time to do facility upgrade. Let's give them lenience. Like, do you think anybody's watching anything, or do you think it's just, hey, we just need more, we want consistency. We don't care what the SAR is.
Well, you're either a desirable franchise or you're not. And if you're an undesirable franchise, pushing people's buttons is probably not the right thing to do. So you should back off. But if you're giving somebody an open Audi point and you're going to be the fourth point in Minneapolis, and you say it has to be a 60,000 square foot with 45 bays, or you don't get the franchise, and that's what you get, right? And then there are some states where you can push back easily, and there's some states where the laws and the dealer association isn't strong. But what would you build to get a Mercedes store or a Lexus store at this point? Anything they want. Maybe more Lexus than Mercedes, and
Yeah.
especially if it's an underserved market.
The OEM I've noticed that really is driving it is Nissan. I'm involved in a lot of Nissan stores, and I mean a lot of them are going with this new design. And God, it just if I was a Nissan dealer, it would be difficult for me to stomach that right now.
On May 1st, I gave it up. I sold it because, by the way, I paid for the plans to do it, etc. But when what I was going to get back was more cars I didn't want, um, and there, listen. There are Nissan people who are extremely talented, extremely focused, and making a living. I just couldn't work that hard for that little. Nor could I look somebody in the eye and say you should do it too. And thank God they closed.
You called it Liberation Day.
Liberation Day. You remember. Free at last. Free at last. And sometimes the best indicator of what you're going to be is those people from the manufacturer. So my region manager and my DM both retired on December 31st. And I wouldn't have hired either of them to be a sales manager in my stores. And so at some point you just sit there and say, it's and Mike ran into it with Mitsubishi. At some point you look at yourself and say, I'm not good enough to fix this, and that's okay, because if I spend my time doing something else and I get rid of the toothache, then everybody's happy, and especially my banker.
Mitsubishi's an interesting brand. I worked at White Bear Mitsubishi, which is pretty large dealership, and just learning the fundamentals of how that OEM operates, but more so to somebody's point earlier in the call, their cars are not inexpensive anymore. I mean, I remember my Outlander stickered at 43, but I'm seeing Outlanders at 51, 52 sticker. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to watch the evolution of that brand and their product positioning.
And did at Whitebear, did you guys sell massive amounts of Mitsus, like top of the country?
White Bear. Well, I mean, I'm not there anymore, but we were number one. Well, we were number two. I can't remember the gentleman's name that was number one, but the reason he was always number one was because he could sell front drive everything. Being in Minnesota, front drives are just very difficult to sell. But we were always number two. 130 to 150 Mitsus. But a third of those were fleet to the state with the PHEVs.
Yeah, I remember
You
it's
know,
like you guys, Mission, were always at the top of the list.
It was a cool store. The dealer principal at the time, Richard, great guy. He spent a lot of money in advertising, and he was he was more of a Minneapolis celebrity. He stepped away since then. He's no longer the owner. But the store spent so much on advertising that you weren't buying a Mitsubishi, you were buying a car from Richard.
that's creating a brand for
He did
sure.
he
You
did
know,
a hell of a job.
you guys were talking about, and I apologize because I'm getting out. I'm going to get off in a second. You guys talked about cheap cars or inexpensive cars. The problem is that there's no margin in inexpensive cars, and unless the government, like China, steps in and takes significant ownership to make sure that that the margin isn't in the car, it's in the company. There's just no way for any of these independent manufacturers to produce inexpensive cars and make a profit at this point. We've put too much, and this is not, it's not a bad thing, too much safety in the cars. We've put too much security in the car. We've lowered the emissions so much that there's no margin. And that's why when they produce less cars, they want to produce more expensive cars because the margin is in the more expensive car.
I I heard I've got a couple of Hyundai dealer friends that this new Ionic 9 doesn't have any profit. I heard that from my understanding is all the money's made in the holdback on that car, that it's a $80,000, when you get the top line trim, it's an $80,000 car and there's not even $1,000 of profit in that car.
And there's probably loss for the manufacturer at 80 grand at this point, right? So how you make that up in mass production is you produce more off of the same engineering, you produce more using the same technology, you produce more. And with the number of vehicles, right? That's why China is a great market. Plus they have government support. But could you imagine going to India and saying, okay, our average new car is $70,000 and the average income in the country is 11?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a larger discussion on the ecosystem of our industry, but man, it's just crazy when you really sit back and think of it. I mean, it should give dealers a lot more credit to be able to maneuver through these times. It's crazy.
Well, they can. I mean, listen, they retooled their whole factories when we were in war and made tanks instead of, Impalas. So, or whatever the model of the choice was back then. My point is, they can do it. They just don't want to do it because they're not certain enough that if they retooled to build cheaper cars, that they could build them cheaper, sell them cheaper, that their dealers would sell them, that the customers would buy them, like all the things that Adam said. But they could do it. It's not that they couldn't do it. They just don't want to do it.
Listen, the reason a Bentley and a Ferrari are expensive is because they don't make enough of them to to make the pricing go down, and that's balancing that cachet between desire and price, right? But it doesn't cost 10 times to make a Bentley than it does to make a Camry, right? It's just they used to make enough Camrys or Rav4s to lower the cost of the engineering, not have to do things by hand, offset the machinery and all of that, right? So it's just an equation, and there is no equation where cheap works unless the government is paying the bill.
Good morning. Hey now.
Hey now.
Hey, I'll take a contrarian view, which I like to do. So, according to the Hague report, the first quarter and even the last year of the automobile business, if you take away the COVID years, they're the best net profit years that we've ever had. So I would argue that these are still some of the golden eras of the car business. I mean, the net profits from the margins. I mean, look at your margins pre 2020, and then look at your floor plan expense. We don't have much floor plan expense because not because we're great, because we can't get the inventory, and then the margins are dramatically better than they were. So if you have low expense and high margin, I mean, that's a pretty good recipe for business. And if you look at how much you were making pre 2020 and the grind and the negative margins and the expense structure that you had, what you made, I'm not, obviously there's different markets and different situations, but if you look at what you're netting, you would have taken that 9 times out of 10 pre-COVID. So I just hope that we're not getting into the mentality we're trying to guard against with salespeople and being COVID babies.
Brad, you're dead
Brad,
on because
you're
I listened to Steve Greenfield yesterday talk about, and he showed the gross profits from 2019 and all that. But our gross profit still today is double, almost double. It's like $200 less than double what it was in 2019. So you're talking we're $1,600 a car as an industry in 2019, average gross profit for dealers, and now it's still 3,000 a car. So your
Right.
point is extremely valid.
But remember that we're producing 15 million in one car in a 15, 14, 8 market rather than produce 19 million in a 17 market, right? So that's really what's happened, and some of that is because of limited supply of certain parts and components, etc. But no, the manufacturers know if they overproduce, other than Nissan and Stellantis, maybe if they overproduce, it all ends. It kills the golden goose for all of us. That's why
Exactly.
prices are up.
And that's what we've learned. That's what we've learned here. This model of complaining about inventory and selling it as fast as it comes in is good for everyone. And that's why we're experiencing these golden years that we are right now. And I mean, even though I complain about inventory, I don't want it to go back to the way it was.
Amen, dude. Amen. If I could ride this year for the rest of my career, I would be one happy
Me
camper.
too.
This is
Second
this
that.
is stuff.
And here's the best part: the SAR is so low that there's so much business out there of vehicles that are long in the tooth. I mean, there's more vehicles on the road, older vehicles on the road than every time in history. So it's not like we've sucked all this business from the last 2 years, and then the next 2 years are going to be challenging. No, I would argue that there's a huge opportunity in volume. Now, yes, we probably sold more cars pre-COVID, but we made less money. So now maybe we can get to the point where, because people can't just drive these cars. I mean, eventually the chickens are going to come back to roost and they're going to have to replace these cars. They might be with used cars or they might be with EVs or cheaper cars, but there's a big opportunity in volume.
But my question is, will people be able to afford new? That's the challenge. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of people in those lower quintiles who just won't be able to
Of
ever buy
course,
new.
yeah, well, the manufacturer's not spending any money on incentives. They don't have to. They're making money hand over fist. So if it gets to the point where market share or quarterly reports on stocks go down because of the lack of sales, what are they going to do? They're going to open up the floodgate of incentives. And what are we going to do with the incentives? We're going to use it to bury negative equity, because if you give car dealers tools to sell cars, guess what we do? Sell cars. We have very little tools right now because they're smart. They don't need to put incentives on cars that nobody can get.
Well, and the thing is we always as dealers figure out, and everybody talks about us being resilient, and it's true, but we always figure out ways to get these people's cars in these people's driveways. But I think the most important part of it is, and this goes back. Everybody's been saying this for years, but it is the dealers who have a good used car operation that thrive, right? Not everybody should be buying a $60,000 car. We just got wild, and programs are so good, incentives were so good, 72 months, 0%. We were able to create these programs that we can get people in payments that they really probably shouldn't be in. Being a good used car dealer means you have the right inventory for all of your customers. And I think the good used car dealers are the ones that are going to continue to see COVID profits.
And I will agree with everyone in the room, I think agrees, that it's just bewildering that we are doing this well when interest rates are so high. There's so much uncertainty in the world. There's a new administration, there's a war going on, inflation is through the roof. I just don't, none of that adds up. So if you're in a college class in business or economics, it would not lead to what the narrative that Patrick and I just said. Doesn't make sense.
So it means it's probably not accurate.
I don't know. But imagine when interest rates come down. Imagine if there's stimulus checks get sent to every American, what the car business is going to do. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think.
When the Ukraine war is settled, the markets start going up even more. I mean, when people got spooked when the market went down, I mean, when you see your portfolio get hit by whatever percentage, you're not that motivated to go out and spend money and buy a car, are you?
Yeah, I don't think interest rates are ever going to go back down to those rates. They're just the money's not there from the population investing in the stock market.
But what is Trump talking about? 5,000 for every American, regardless of income. I mean, Americans aren't going to save that money. They're going to spend it on a car.
Yeah, that's if past behavior. But we all know about past behavior. But yeah, that's what they did with the stimulus checks.
Well, Warren Buffett says past behavior will always predict the future, but the wild card in that is all the things that Trump is doing has never been done before. So that could throw all that historical repeat itself kind of thing out the window. Usually the government does nothing.
Yeah, I just don't know if we'll ever see those interest rates again. In circa what 2023, 2022.
Well, Trump wants them to go down, and he gets what he wants. So whatever he's going to do to get it, and when that happens, when rates ease, or the Ukraine situation is resolved, or Japan with the tariffs, the market's going to fly. And if we really are saving all this money with Doge and tariffs, if we really are saving all this money and all that money gets poured back into the consumer, I think that lines up for a fantastic second half of the year, or maybe next year.
And if the IRS becomes the ERS, you're in for a boom.
But nobody saw COVID coming, so there something could be lurking around the corner that we've never even thought of before. That could happen. All things, lots of things could happen.
You know, it's funny. You actually sound hopeful that something will happen.
I sound
I,
what?
hopeful. Not no. What I mean is not hopeful that something bad will happen, but like you're hopeful that there's some disruption. Because, like you said, you thrive on it. That's when you guys kick in the high gears when throw an obstacle in front of you.
I just think to that point, I just think that in the car business, we just never waste a good crisis. Like we've always, and I'm on 27 and a half years, and we've had all these different things happen, and every single time we figure out ways, the good ones figure out ways to thrive from it. So I think we got one life to live. I think it's a good way to live it.
Yeah, 2008 was probably the worst. And looking back on it is that's when I really sharpened my skills and learned as much as I possibly could. That's a perfect example of problems or gifts in disguise. You don't learn anything from good times. In fact, you get fat and you start relaxing a little bit, and I hate that. I prefer the grind. I know that's demented.
And that's why we love you.
I don't get me wrong. I love the money I made during COVID, but the whole time I'm staying there, I knew this was not real. I just knew this wasn't real, but I enjoyed it, every bit of it.
Don't you think everybody learns the most from your mistakes more than your triumphs, right?
That's absolutely correct. There's no doubt about it. Problems are gifts. If you look at just about all the major problems that you've had in your life, there's been some gift that has come out of it, and it doesn't happen right away. And if you think of divorces or losing your job at the time, I bet that was the worst thing in the world, and your gut wrenched, and that's all you thought about and obsessed about it and stared at the ceiling and you couldn't sleep. But as years go on, most people will look back and say, boy, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought new adventures, it brought new possibilities. I mean, even Tony Robbins was talking about during the wildfires in California that, what's worse than losing all your memories and losing your house and being displaced? But it does open up new adventures and new possibilities, if you think about it. If you ask those people 2 or 3 years from now, maybe they'll say the same thing. Maybe I'm an ideologist. Maybe everything I'm saying is not true. But if I believe it's true and it makes my life better, what's the harm in that?
I love that, Brad. If I believe it's true and it makes my life better, what's the harm in that?
That's
That's
on that's
perfect.
on my gravestone, buddy, and it's true. I believe all this shit
I
that the
do too.
skeptics. I do. I believe it, and I believe that the harder you work on yourself, the more optimistic you are, the more you learn, your luck changes. You just walk into a 4G deal. All of a sudden, you get a tax refund you didn't know about. Then you can start getting something in the mail that says your taxes are going down. But if you're focused on what's missing and focus on what other people have and things you can't control, and then black everybody out because you get significance from your problems, guess what? That train of problems just follows you around, that black cloud. I absolutely believe that.
1000% and perfectly said. Thank you. I'm sitting here smiling ear to ear while I'm stretching. That is just absolutely fire.
Yeah, Joe needs to clip that part. That was
And
amazing.
if a psychology professor tells me that that's all bullshit, does it really matter? If I believe it's true, then that's all that matters.
Especially if you're happy, you got a great quality of life. Go ahead and be miserable and be right. Stop it. Are you kidding me?
Hey, don't stretch too hard, cuz. I don't want you to hurt nothing for our Tuesday meeting now.
You're funny.
You should be stretching, Roger. If I were you, I'd be doing some yoga
I,
class. So don't make fun of him because you're a masculine
hey,
Texan with green tips,
I,
and he's from California doing yoga.
hey, I can't, man. They won't let me just yet.
I mean, after this is over with, that is something you should definitely add to your repertoire.
Never a day goes by where I don't do my stretching. That's what you have to do when you're my
Me
age
too.
and brittle.
I do yoga every single day.
Let's go. We're two weird dudes, man, on the opposite
Should live in
sides of the country.
California.
You don't want to do that.
Anybody want a feel good story?
Come
Every
on, let's
day,
go,
buddy,
buddy.
especially from you.
So a few months ago, we had an employee pass away of cancer. Good employee. We brought him in. He was a service advisor. He moved up from Orlando. He battled cancer for many, many, many years. He ended up being a very much favorite employee. Badass award 3 years in a row. And but he worked his ass off. I mean, when I say even through cancer, you guys, you talking about Brad, what Brad's saying on the mental state. This dude, he died. He came to work every single day up to 2 weeks before. I couldn't get him to stay up. 2 weeks before he died is when he stopped coming to work. And his wife, she took good care. I mean, a complete saint. But he even when he knew he was going to pass and he was on hospice at home, he asked to be taken from his home in his beaver uniform. It's just that's how connected our company was to this guy. And after he passed, his wife, who is just she's just special, she's just special, and we offered her a job in the store in our client care center, which is our phone center, and she's been just amazing. And it was just a few weeks after he passed that she came to work for us, and we stay. She's just wonderful. And a few weeks ago, her dog passed away, and talking about just tough, and she's just like Brad said, like in her head, her spirit is just amazing. Well, today the entire phone room is going to present her with their new puppy that they all paid for, which I think is just absolutely beautiful. And I can't wait to get to work and watch this moment.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that guy had significance and passion and love all the way to the very end, and a legacy that'll live forever in your company. It's amazing the two different approaches to life.
Amen, David. Amen. I mean, he came on as a service advisor, and it was about a year ago where he just couldn't be in front of customers anymore because he'd get weak. And so I gave him a role, and he wanted to clean the shop. So he showed up every single day at 6 in the morning, David, and cleaned the shop, battling cancer up to 2 weeks before he died. It was just, you just can't replace people like that. And it wasn't because it actually, and this is just such a good point on life. It actually wasn't because he liked to work. It's because he loved the company so much and the people in it. He just didn't want to let people down. And there was nothing we can do to convince him that it was okay to take days off. It was okay to not feel well and not come in. He just loved the company and people so much. He asked to be taken out of his home in his work uniform. Wild. Anyway, thought I'd share.
about a reason to
Ugh.
go into work today.
But what about state of mind and how you can show up and the stories we tell ourselves to prevent us from being able to show up as our best self? Right? The little insignificant things that we convince ourselves are insurmountable, and this guy's battling for his life and still showing up, making people better, making people love him even more. That's great story.
Yeah, that's perspective for sure. Um, that's the other wacky thing about this crazy life experience is that sometimes the more successful you get, and when you start getting what you want, you don't enjoy it as much because you don't have that progress. And then immigrants that come to this country are like amazed by an A1 bottle and take it home with them. They're every day. This just like they're just so grateful, and somehow we have to trick our minds into being grateful that we're free for one thing, that we're alive for another, that we don't have sick children. I mean, what's bad is always available, but what's good is everywhere, and people take what's good for granted.
So cool. One of the sections in the new book that hopefully will be out in a few months is perspective gratitude equation. It's funny you even say that, because with those two things perfectly in alignment or at least balanced, life is so much better.
When you're grateful, for
Hard
sure.
to be hateful when you're grateful, but it's really impossible if your perspective is right.
You know, you and I are super Tony Robbins fans, and one of the cornerstones of his teaching that I don't do enough is that the secret to living is giving. You know, that's I like you to challenge me, David, on that. That I need. I was actually at a recital yesterday for special needs kids that my wife and my dog, my therapy dog, go to once a week, and I was really just overcome with great emotion just seeing these teachers taking care of these kids and their parents watching their special needs kids perform a musical, and it just made me want to try to help this place because they operate on a dime and the people that work there don't make any money, but the light in their face, and they make no money, and the fulfillment of all that. So circling back to my original point that if you want to feel good, make others feel good.
It's the key to recovery, and I think that's a pretty good track record. People that are outside of themselves helping others stay sober longer, have a better quality of life. I mean, I could go on and on and on about that being the secret to happiness. Anytime I'm feeling jammed up or not feeling grateful or my perspective's off, I'll go to a beginner's meeting. I'll work with a newly recovering alcoholic, and immediately my perspective and outlook on life changes. So there's got to be a lot to it.